hope you're having a great day. So today I am going over 5 reasons that you should buy local flowers. And when I say local flowers, I mean flowers that were grown locally as close to the marketplace or floral shop as possible. So I'm not talking about flowers that have been flown in and gone through all of the crazy channels that flowers can go to on their journey here, which I'll bring that up in a little bit. But I'm talking about local flowers that are grown close to home. So a lot of people might wonder, why grow local? Why is buying local important? And it kind of is like the food industry. So when you go out and you buy local foods that are grown close to home, you know that if you buy them and they're in the United States, you know that all the chemicals or anything used with those foods have been approved by some kind of organization. If a farmer buys chemicals, you know that those chemicals are regulated and you know that they're approved in the United States, or you wouldn't be buying them. But this isn't true in other countries. 75% of cut flowers are imported from Latin America. Why? Because Latin America is hot and flowers do really well growing in hot areas. But anywhere that there's hot areas, humid areas, good areas for flowers to grow, there's also going to be a ton of insect pressure. And when these flowers are going to travel all the way across the world and make it into your house, they're not going to be all bit up by insects, or nobody would buy them. They wouldn't make it past the wholesaler. They wouldn't make it past the florist. They wouldn't make it by anybody, right? But the problem with these flowers is that they can be used, pesticides can be thrown on these and used on these that are banned in the United States. So we've said these are unsafe chemicals to be using. We don't allow them to go into our soils and our water supply and get them on our hands, and we have all these safety regulations, but these countries don't necessarily have that. Now, I have done some reading and it made me happy to hear that there are things being done to put more regulations in place, and I think that's coming more from places like the United States saying we're not going to buy these flowers if these conditions aren't true. But right now they are true. So there are a lot of women that work in flower fields, and they are subject to these horrible chemicals that they don't know could be hurting their unborn children, could be hurting them. And then when they fly back into the United States, there isn't this huge regulation process on what the flowers can have on them like there is with food. So now you're taking those flowers, you're sticking them in your face. Maybe your kid is grabbing them and then putting their fingers in their mouth. There's all sorts of things that could go wrong because these countries aren't regulating chemicals the way that the United States regulates them, right? So to me, it's well, yeah, that's the definite benefit of buying from your local farmer in your local town. One, if they do use anything, you can ask them what they use. You can research it. It's just kind of like food. It's kind of like the slow food movement. It's get on board with the slow flower movement. Know what you're bringing into your house. Know what you're touching. Know what your kids are touching. So one of the number one things I think of when I think, why would you want to buy local, would be you're buying local because, one, all the chemicals are regulated in the United States. You know that's what's coming in is safe to you. And you can ask your local farmer what they use. A lot of flower farmers don't even really use anything but organic products. So they're a lot safer. So I guess I say, because of the lack of chemicals, but I guess number one is buying local flowers is safer. So a little known fact that I found is roses can contain over 50 times the amount that's allowed to have on food. So if you do have a kid that grabs the roses, smells the roses, and they have their hands all up on the roses, these roses could have chemical residue on them that is not safe. And now they grab some fruit or they grab something else in your house. Now they are getting these toxins, these chemicals And who wants that? Nobody wants that. I've been reading a book called Flower Confidential. I've actually read the book. I've read it twice now. And I made a couple little notes in here. This book is awesome. I'll just read what it's about. I think any flower farmer should read this book. It says, it might be unromantic to call a flower a commodity or a manufactured product, but flowers are both. They become big business, created in laboratories, bred in test tubes, grown in factories, harvested by machines, packed into boxes, sold at auctions, and flown across oceans and continents to your supermarket or local florist. Amy Stewart tracks down the hybridizers, geneticists, growers, and vendors working to invent, manufacture, and sell flowers that are bigger, brighter, and sturdier than anything nature can provide. So that's what this book is about, and it is an awesome book. It isn't about why you should buy local. It is really about the entire process of the $40 billion a year cut flower industry. And this lady goes, she goes to Bogota, she goes to Miami and sees all these cargo planes going in. And she describes all of her experiences in this book. She's a flower lover. She's a gardener, flower lover. And the process is amazing. Everything you read about in this book, it really, it amazed me. I thought it was a great book. I don't think in any way she's trying to, put down the industry or anything like that, but there are some facts in here that when you're reading them, you pull them out and you're like, yeah, this is one reason you should buy local, or that's another reason you should buy local. And so I highlighted just a couple in the very first pages. So here is one page about the pesticides and the chemicals, and I'm just going to read straight from the book. It says, and every year around Valentine's Day, some newspaper is likely to run what I've come to call the Blood and Roses story. The one that warns that behind every Latin American or African rose is an exploited worker in a poisoned river. There's some truth to that story. In Ecuador, I watched women dip long-stemmed roses blossom first into barrels of fungicide, a spectacle that put me off roses for months. And she goes on to talk about all of these different experiences she has. So if you get out there and you read books and you study the internet, you will start seeing that it really does matter to buy local. Local flowers are really better for you and your environment. So number one on my list is buy local, because you can know what chemicals, pesticides, or anything that has been used on those flowers, and you know that it's approved in the United States. If anything is used, most flower growers are doing a lot of, I try to do everything that I can. I put down the landscape fabric. I do, in my videos, you can see that. I try not to use anything for the weeds. I try to pull weeds and put down the black landscape fabric. A lot of people use mulch. I think that a lot of growers are just in tune to nature and the environment, and we all want to do our part to make it better. And with that said, the second reason that you would consider buying local over buying these flowers that are imported is the carbon emissions. So if you think about a flower, I have another thing in this book. It puts it very nicely. It says, flowers today may be better traveled than the people who buy them. Let's say you live in Las Vegas. Have you been to Bogota, Miami, San Francisco? Your flowers have. Or maybe you're in Maine. Your flowers could have been to Kenya, Holland, and Manhattan before they showed up at your daughter's wedding. They may have flown on bigger planes than you ever have. More people, field workers, supervisors, sales reps, brokers, truckers, auctioneers, wholesalers, buyers, bookkeepers, retailers have all talked about your flowers in more languages than you can probably say hello in. So think of that. Let's think about that. Let's say that you buy Ecuadorian roses, and this is where it's why buy local? And there are, some of these flowers you can get are gorgeous and they're beautiful, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with that, like buying pretty flowers that are great, but you can also buy local flowers that don't put, you know, you don't have the chance of these pesticides. You don't have as many carbon emissions going out into the atmosphere. Think of this beautiful, glorious rose, you know, like an Ecuadorian rose. So it's huge and it's gorgeous and it's beautiful, but it has flown in a cargo plane, landed in Miami, Florida, been driven to a wholesaler somewhere, and then it's distributed to the retailer and then distributed to you. So I don't think I have to explain like why that would put off more carbon emissions than your local farmer that drove to town to the local farmer's market or to the local florist and you picked up your flowers from the local florist. Like, it's just obvious that with all of the fuel, like, you're gonna have more carbon emissions, and you're just hurt it. Like, and then you think of the 19 million stems that are brought into the United States. 19 million stems of flowers are brought into the United States. So if you do your research, I mean, there's a lot going on because you have greenhouses too. Like, so greenhouses put off carbon emissions and fuel. And so you've got all these things. And if you think of it in a worldwide aspect, or what is the smallest footprint that you could make with flowers? Well, it's probably like growing them in your backyard and cutting them. But if you aren't doing that and you're not a gardener and you don't have flowers that you can cut, like a local flower farm, and having your florist know that you want to support these local industries is huge, because why would they go out and buy local if they know that they can sell these other flowers? Like, if there's no demand from the consumer, then they're going to keep doing what they're doing because what they're doing is working. But us as consumers can say, hey, do you have anything local? Do you buy from any local growers? I would love to have a bouquet of local flowers, locally grown flowers. And like, they're seasonal, so like, they're really pretty. So that's a second reason why buying local is important. Like, it's important to the world. And the third reason to buy local is that flowers help your environment. So plants put off oxygen. We breathe oxygen. The more plants that are putting off oxygen in your area, the better off you're going to be. Flowers have a positive environmental impact. They help. I mean, think of the bees. The bees go to get the pollen, butterflies, hummingbirds, like all of these beneficial insects, and even the hummingbirds, birds. Like, they love flowers. Animals love flowers, which we do try to keep them out of our flower fields because we don't want them eating the flowers. But at the end of the season, a lot of flower farmers will leave the seed pods for the birds. I know that, like, this year I did that with about, I would say, 1/8 of an acre. I left all of the flowers there, and now the birds in the wintertime have these seed heads and these seed pods that they can like feed off of. And in the summer, with the bees and the butterflies, the flowers give off pollen. And a lot of your imported flowers, they're trying to produce those so that they don't have pollen, because like, people started complaining that the pollen like drops on their table or it makes a mess. But if you think outside the box or think bigger picture, wouldn't it be better to have flowers that actually have pollen and help support the environment than to not just have to wipe it off of a table? Like, to me, that's a no-brainer. And there are some flowers, if you research sunflowers, they're an amazing plant. They actually go in and take toxins out of the soil. And if their roots like can get down to a source of water, they actually will pull different minerals and bad metals out of the water and out of the soil, and they improve the quality of your soil. So flowers definitely help your environment. And you can do a ton of research on how they help your environment, but I'm just giving you my list, and that is one of the reasons I would say to buy local, because it helps the environment. The fourth reason I came up with to buy local flowers is that they have a longer vase life. So there is a ton of stuff you can read about this. Flowers are bred now to have an extremely long vase life. So you got growers in other countries, and they are, I mean, flowers are generated in test tubes sometimes. So they are taking things away like scent and different things to make these like sturdy stems and like big, beautiful, bright colored flowers, like colors we've never seen before. And that's awesome. Like I love flowers. I love seeing things like that. And they also make the vase life good. But why do they make the vase life good? Why do these stems have to be stronger? It's because they have to be transported so far before they finally make it to the consumer's house. But if you're buying from a local farmer, more than likely they cut those flowers that morning in their field or possibly the day before. So now you are going to get the longest vase life of a naturally produced flower, which sometimes, I mean, in some flowers that can be 7 days, in some flowers that could be 20 days. But they didn't have to go through any of the harsh environments. Like think about when you go and you fly on an airplane, like you kind of get dried out. You want to, like, they give you water, they give you drinks on the plane because it dries you out. Well, what do you think happens to flowers when they're shipped overseas? Like, they're going to get dried out, but they are being bred to be able to withstand that. But by the time you get the flowers, do they have as long a vase life as that flower that you got right out of the field? I mean, you can run a series of tests and see, but from what I've seen, growing locally, like cutting locally and getting locally cut flowers, you have a tremendous vase life, and you have a huge variety of flowers that are in season. And the number 5 reason is to support local farmers like me. So I think that's really important. Like, I'm out there trying to do something that helps the environment, cuts down on the emissions, cuts down on pesticides that people may be consuming or bringing into their houses. I'm doing something that is a passion of mine, and why not support the local flower farmers in your area? They are going to grow seasonal cut flowers that look beautiful. It'll look like you went out to the garden and got some flowers and made a beautiful arrangement. But the only way that we can do that is if you start pushing your local florist, hey, I'd really like to see more seasonal, locally grown flowers. Another book that I really enjoyed reading and looking at was Slow Flowers by Deborah Prinzing. I hope I'm saying that right. It is a really neat book. So this lady went through and she created bouquets of seasonal flowers, and they're gorgeous. I mean, some of these bouquets are just absolutely gorgeous bouquets. Sorry, that's like, there's too much light shining on there. But she just went through and she tried to make a seasonal bouquet like for 50 weeks. And I thought that this was a really good book because it shows how you can actually use locally grown flowers. So if you haven't picked up this book, I really do think this is a great book. One thing when I was starting, I was kind of like, well, can I put together bouquets? And as I was putting them together, I was like, oh wow, this is just like a bouquet of flowers just seems smaller than like a garden. It's a smaller area to put the colors and the shapes and the sizes together. And so when I was reading this line in this book, like, I thought it was really neat because it was something that I thought of. And I think it's a good quote for flower farmers to keep in mind if you're questioning, your skills or questioning if you should be putting arrangements together. It says, gardeners are especially qualified in the art of floral design. After all, we have an intimate relationship with our plants. We know their bloom cycle, their natural form and character, and their seasonality. We also know what colors and textures we like when combined in the landscape. A vase can be a little garden, its contents gathered and arranged to please the eye. That's so true. I thought that was just a really inspiring quote. So just to recap, 5 reasons. 1, you're going to reduce like the number of chemicals and exploitable labor that's happening in the flower industry. 2, you're going to reduce carbon emissions being put out into the universe. 3, you're going to be helping the air around your local environment, the soil and the water, the birds and the bees. 4, you're going to get an exceptionally great vase life. And with that, you're also going to get beautiful seasonal flowers that look amazing in arrangement. And 5, you're supporting local farmers like me that are trying to make a difference. I hope this video was informational. I hope it helps you. One reason I wanted to go through it is I'm trying to make some brochures up about my flower farm, and just, you know, in doing that, I was trying to think, well, why would people want to buy local? And I started reading books and I started searching the web, and I was like, yeah, like these are all the reasons to buy local. And I think it really helps to know these things. I think it helps if you go out and research these things on your own. And then if you have a customer say, why would I ask my florist to buy flowers from you when they're already getting them from somebody else? I mean, the main thing would actually, I mean, the florists can buy from the local farmers, but the wholesalers, if we can, as a group of people, get these wholesalers to start trying to buy seasonally, locally grown flowers in the United States, I think we would make a huge difference. And I think that really starts with the consumer. So I think getting the word out to consumers, getting the word out to local florists, and then hopefully getting the word out to the wholesalers to start trying to find as many farms in the United States to get cut flowers from in season. It's a really important process that we should start looking at as Americans. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day.